Oh, yeah. What's going on, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of the Intrigue Dynamite Show. Today's episode is sponsored by whatever I feel like talking about. So, be sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and share. And if you do want to sponsor this channel, then go ahead and hit that Cash App up at $Intrigue Dynamite. And if you have any subjects that you would like to be analyzed, and you would like for me to do a forensic dive into it and dissect it and give you my take on it, then go ahead on and either ask your questions in the comment section or hit me up at thegreatestofthese@yahoo.com. Alright guys, so look, today's show is going to be a brief one. As I said before, it's going to be more radio format, so you can just sit back and relax and listen, but there will be a video display of some of what I'm going to talk about. So today, we're going to be going into a subject matter that was brought up by the Lead Attorneys channel. And I'm just pretty much going to be just dispelling some myths and just allowing you to make your own assessment of the matter at hand. So the Lead Attorney did a subject matter about chaos in the manosphere, and also should women be in the manosphere? Now, which is quite interesting because I did a take on this, or I kind of addressed that subject matter a few days prior to his live stream, and I essentially just said, listen, women's input is always welcome, but the manosphere is a concept. It's not a business. It's not an actual LLC or a corporation that anyone can say, hey, you're part of it and you're not. It's just kind of, it's not like a real real business entity. It is an idea. It is an idea of men having a voice. That's it. It's an idea and of certain people that have a camaraderie with one another and have a message for men. It's a space where men are pretty much speaking from a male perspective. A male perspective, hoping to advise men and to communicate to the world at large. And that also includes women. Women can gain value from that, right? Now, a man can also, he can reach out, he can have allies, but that doesn't mean that that woman is in the manosphere. It means that she is a woman that is allied with men, and men have allied with her, right? That's no different than, let's say Israel being allied with the United States. And I don't know if they are, but I'm just saying, Israel and the United States being allies. It doesn't mean that Israel is in the United States or is part of the United States. No, they're just allied. Okay, so anyway, let's get into this. Now, I'm going to play the first guy's argument, and I'm going to let you hear it. And then I'm going to play the second man's argument, and I'm going to address that. Okay, so now for context, let me give you a picture of what's happening here. So here's what a lot of men are saying. Men are agreeing with this model. This model which highlights that that manosphere is essentially a concept and a space for men to speak on men's issues and have, it's something that the masculine energy that comes from the men, the masculine perspective, right? And as you can see, it is part of an ecosystem of different entities. The pink represents the women, the green represents the audience. So as you can see, it's this ecosystem, this sort of solar system. There are more spaces where women have their thing. Hence the reason that there are more pink circles, right? The audience at large is just anyone, men and women, right? So what the first group of guys is saying that they want this model where, yes, they can have people that they're connected to, but are not considered manosphere. This second model, this is what other people are advocating on the behalf of. In this model, it's the manosphere is not men that have their space in this organization, this organizational structure of their space where they reach out to other people and have other people informing them, as their entity, their group allied with them, right? But instead are in it, are part of the concept of manosphere. Okay, because how guys are looking at it is like this. They're imagining it as having, just for an example, 8 leaders, right? So you have 8 leaders of a thing. 6 of them are men. 2 of them are women. If this is dictatorial power and or legislative power to change the direction of a thing, men are saying, no, we don't want women to have that type of power, legislating what happens in men's spaces. Where on another hand, there are guys that are and I don't know if it's because they are conflating the issue. They aren't seeing what men are talking about. Perhaps there's like a lack of communication, because perhaps some guys are thinking that men are saying, no, it should just be men all by themselves, only talking to one another. That's not what the manosphere is about. The manosphere is not internal. It's actually something that expands outward. It's not something that sucks everything, that is something that draws everything inward. Only men. No, that's not what it is. It's about men that contribute to an outward message of a man's perspective. You see, that's what it is. It's about men that have lived an experience that then decide to branch out and disperse their knowledge and their voice. Okay? So there might be a miscommunication there. So where some people are thinking that it's about people saying, no, it's a club only for men. No, it's a concept. That's it. It is a concept of men that can get together and form some sort of powerhouse of media that hopefully can branch out to other women. Hopefully can branch out to other women and other people that want to be contributors. That's it. Now, allow me to get into the video and stop my monologue. Let's hit that beautiful beam footage.
I liken people, and no disrespect to Dr. Neal, no disrespect to Theo or anything like that, but I liken people to that think that women don't have a place in the manosphere to folks that think that you can't learn something from a white person.
Well, I would say this, since he's used a white analogy. And since you used, we're going to go there. What happens when white people? What happens when white people invade black spaces? What happens when white people come into black politics? What happens when white people enter the domain of black culture? We've seen this in music. We've seen this in politics. We've seen this at so many levels. It gets whitewashed. They take it over. It gets co-opted. And before you know it, the thing that began as being black now is completely different. It's something else. All right. I'll give you an example. Hip hop. Hip hop is global. It's all over the world. Okay. At one time, hip hop was specific. It was particular to a group of black people in particular. Okay. It stayed within this group. It grew. White people got a whiff of it. They realized they can make money off of it. They got into it. They put the money behind it. And before you know it, hip hop became something else. Okay. So the thing is that I'm not saying that you cannot have allies. I'm not saying that you don't need to have folks who are going to support what you're doing. I'm saying is that you need to be critical. You need to understand what your agenda is, what your mission is, and to stay focused. I'm also saying this, is that black men, we have a unique situation. And I said this and I'll say this again. I grew up around women. I grew up around my mother, my aunts, my cousins. I grew up in a family of women. All right. I understood women, but before I left home. Okay. And I'm not the only black male who has had that experience. Okay. If you were raised without a father, if you weren't raised with a whole bunch of men, and I had men in my experience. But what I'm saying is that black men in this country, America, we are inundated with the female perspective. We are inundated. And black men need to have spaces where they can talk to themselves without constantly having to refer or defer to the female voice. Now, here's the thing, since you brought up the white thing. Infiltration. One of the tendencies that happens with women, and women don't acknowledge this, is that women will come in and try to take the space over. Okay, to colonize the space, colonization, to colonize the space with their ideas, their desires, everything that they want the space to be. This is what you need to do again. This is how you need to operate as black men. Okay, this space was born from the perspective that black men need to talk to each other and that black men need to have a perspective. We are not anti-woman. I'm not anti-woman. None of us are anti-woman, okay? We're saying that you have to have some independence. The feminists did that. Hold on. The feminists did that. The feminists separated. You had feminist separatism. They got away from men, okay? I know professors who worked in universities for 30 years who only taught classes exclusively with women, okay? The gays and lesbians have done the same thing. You're not going to have heterosexuals going to an LGBTQ movement and telling LGBTQ people how to move, operate, how to be. LGBTQ people are not sitting around taking notes and getting consultations from straight people.
All right, listen.
Because they don't want. Wait. I'm not done. I'm not done.
Go ahead, Dr. Neal. You got it, bro.
Since you're military, when you talk about the Korea and North Korea, China, you talk about Russia, they might have allies. They might work with each other, but there are some clear boundaries between them. And there are some clear understandings that these nations have in terms of sovereignty, in terms of autonomy. And I'm saying that black male independence is about black men understanding that there are lines, there are boundaries, there's a demarcation that must be respected.
So, as you can see, the first gentleman essentially is advocating on the behalf of an allyship with women, but it seems as though he's expressing a certain, he's expressing a sentiment that is not foreign to men that agree with the first model of the manosphere having allies on the outside of the initial concept of what the manosphere is. He expresses the fears and some of the concerns that men have had due to this idea that whenever women come into a man's space, there is a tendency, I'm just rewording what he's saying. There is a tendency for women to want to switch things around for their own comfort. So essentially saying that women have a habit of wanting to redecorate. and rearrange the furniture in your house. You see? Now, could that be a good thing? Well, it depends on how you're living. If you're living like a pig, sometimes, hey, look, a woman's touch is exactly what the doctor ordered, right? But that's on an individual basis. Now, what about men as a group, men at large? Is it necessary that men at large have women that come into their space and say, let me check the books. Let me see what's going on here. Yeah, I don't know about that. Well, let me tell you something. A lot of men have expressed discontent behind some ladies wanting to grab hold of the steering wheel. And we cannot be misled. Right now, there are a lot of women that are very independent. They're boss chicks, And even if you said, hey, well, look, women in the manosphere is going to be like, man, you can't tell them what to do. They're going to do it anyway. And that's essentially what it is. It's like, hey, well, if she wants to speak on male issues, yeah, that's great. That doesn't necessarily mean it's manosphere. It's just a woman speaking on these issues. Manosphere is man, I guess inside of a globe. I don't know. But anyway, let's continue on with the second guy's take.
You had mentioned or asked the question about women being in the manosphere space. And I really like Theo. And Dr. Neil, this is the first opportunity I've had to be exposed to you. But I love what you've had to say. But one thing that I'm certain of is when you know better, you can do better. And a lot of times we fail for lack of information, yet and still we're in the information age. So check this out, right? We've heard the money's perspective. We've heard the educated perspective. Let me give you the military tactical perspective of this.
Yes.
Any ally that you can possibly have when you are in a conflict is valuable. Lead, you're a chess player. Every pawn, and you're a high-level chess player. Every pawn counts. I'm not calling women pawns, but you understand my sentiment, right? Mm-hmm. There are so many things.
To be honest, pawns can become queens. Okay?
Exactly. Exactly. And let me tell you something. I talked many videos ago about an old movie called The Spook Who Sat by the Door. It's about a black man that went and learned military tactics from white people, took it back to the hood. It's an old blaxploitation movie. And he took it back to the hood and fought the civil rights movement with it. I liken people, and no disrespect to Dr. Neil, no disrespect to Theo or anything like that, but I liken people to that think that women don't have a place in the manosphere to folks that think that you can't learn something from a white person. Imagine the white person saying, we don't want black dollars. That'd be ridiculous. So there is absolutely a place for women in the manosphere. Absolutely. Now, there are going to be a lot of shady folks and charlatans, opportunists and stuff. And that's why we as men need to know our position in this manosphere thing, and the people that have the experience and the wisdom to vet these people that come into the manosphere, cats like O'Shea, they have their role to make sure that everybody that's coming in is on the up and up. But I'll tell you, Lee, you and I have had conversations and we've talked about marginal gains. I've literally heard you say that you would read a 300-page book if it had 2 pages that would give you a little bit of an edge in it. I've heard you say that. I've talked to O'Shea. O'Shea has literally talked about a competitive advantage. And if you think that you're only going to get ahead getting the information from the men, you're foolish. You're foolish. Absolutely. Shout out to Kevin Samuels. You're foolish at best. So don't sit here and act like the women don't have a place here. They absolutely do.
Okay, so listen, look, great ideas, they often fall on deaf ears, or they're promptly tossed to the swine due to one's inability to effectively articulate the idea. So, so like this review that I'm about to give is not with the intent of bashing one's beliefs. And it's not an attempt for me to force my opinion or my view onto anyone else. This is just a healthy examination into why I'm right and he's wrong. So anyway, let's begin. Nah, that was a joke. So, but listen. So essentially what I'm saying is that a guy, he might be having valid points, but his inability to articulate it in a way that that understands what the other guy was talking about, to address the things that the first guy was saying, because the first guy essentially said what I agree with. It's just like having a woman's space, and men go in there and they sit in there and say, "Hey, look, there's gonna be some changes around here." That's essentially that, because you could have a guy go into a woman's space, but he's going to be at the underneath the leadership of the women, or the mercy of whatever the women say do, or their agenda. That doesn't make him part of that. It makes him an ally, because he's not a woman. So, now, this reference that he used, the spook who sat by the door. Now, this is a horrible reference in support of his position. You see? Because the spook who sat by the door is about a guy making an attempt to be accepted by the gatekeepers of the CIA. A space where, due to his race, on the surface, he was considered persona non grata, meaning an unwelcome person for those who aren't up to date on their Latin. But after performing so well on all of the tests and exceeding their expectations, these expectations of these gatekeepers who just so happen to be white, he was accepted and learned all of the methods and tactics whereby he ultimately took what he learned and returned back to the hood and used it to declare war on the very people that took him in and taught him. So persona non grata in this context would be the woman who's making attempts to enter into the manosphere. She would be the spook who sat by the door, right? Whereby at first glance, men would be against it, but then after winning over their trust and learning all of their teachings and the tactics, these men freaking bring her in and teach her all of these things and give her all of the information. Then she would return back to her own tribe of women and use what she learned to teach these women to destroy the same men that taught her. See? So that doesn't even make any sense. It actually goes against your point. So before you make, that attempt to try to make a poignant reference, be sure that you know what you're talking about, because using that as your example destroys your entire argument. That unless the end goal is to have your jelly beans amputated while you're sleeping. So anyway, here's the second point.
I think that you have a parallactic view on this whole situation. Personally, I cannot be infiltrated by a black woman. Those are my women. So there is no infiltration. This male independence is foolhardy. All right. There is so much more strength in interdependence than there is in independence. We're supposed to be leading our women. So if you feel that black women are infiltrating this space, no diss. This is going to sound really smug, and I don't mean it that way. But perhaps your position is not to lead, because a leader understands the benefits and the shortfalls of every person underneath their command. Our women, not just black women, all women are useful. And I'm going to tell you right now. Well, that's not true. There are some worthless chicks out here. But I'm going to tell you right now, if you sit there and you isolate yourself, you're putting yourself, nature is a beast. Success leaves clues. When you isolate gene pools and stuff like that, it gets perverted. There has to be diversification. You have a parallactic view.
Parallactic. view. This is an interesting choice of word, and not without a sense of irony. So here's an example of a parallactic view. See? So as you can see, it is a manner by which something is perceived given the observer's line of sight. So given the average height of a woman being about 5'4" tall, this view would either suggest that the height of the Sphinx was in that range, give or take a few inches, right? Of 5'4", or that this woman is a Sasquatch. She's a giant. So in context, this view would represent a vague statement. A statement that has little information, very few references. You know, so like this photo having few references, which provides depth in depth perception, would render this photo parallactic. So, see? Now, on the other hand, pertaining to the Sphinx, this would be considered this would be an example more of an objective view, which allows more depth and clarity, giving referential context to the true stature of the Sphinx. Now, so utilizing the same metric of an average woman's height being about 5'4" tall, this view allows us to see that the Sphinx far exceeds the height impression that the first photo gave us as the viewer. So this type of view in context would be someone giving historical references to support their claim, or personal experiences to support their claim that have been shared by others, versus someone just making vague assertions with passion. So the irony that the gentleman relegate his opponent's stance to being a parallactic view, even after his opponent gave references to support his stance as to why he did not believe that it was a good idea for women to lead in spaces of men's improvement. Whether you agree with his references or not, he gave references. But this guy gave no references, just thoughts, which restricts the conversation to his own conjecture and limiting the scope of the viewer, rendering his view considerably more limited or parallactic than the man that he accused of being parallactic. You follow? Hope I didn't lose you.
When you isolate gene pools and stuff like that, it gets perverted. There has to be diversification.
Isolating gene pools. Now, he used this as his comparison. Look, to me, this is a horrible comparison. It is a terrible analogy because it has a limited scope. This is also considered a parallactic point, you see, because it only looks at it from one angle, right? Even myopic, if you will. Because think about this. How perverted, if isolating gene pools is perverted, how perverted are the people of North Sentinel Island? They are isolated and have been so for an estimated 60,000 years, thriving in the aftermath of our ancestors, a lot of our ancestors going into slavery, you know. These people were thriving when Europe was in its dark ages. They were thriving all throughout the Inquisitions when everybody was fighting over religion, you know. They were thriving throughout the Great Flood. I mean, being isolated. Huh? And to this day, they are still thriving. You know? But think about this. It was in 1880, after some 60,000 years, when there was a white outsider, European outsider, by the name of Maurice Vidal Portman, who went to North Sentinel Island and kidnapped 6 of the natives, 2 adults. It was a man and a woman and 4 children. When he kidnapped them off of that island, the man and the woman died quickly. They died like almost instantly due to sickness because of the disease of the outsiders. So then he hurried up and he went and dropped the kids back off and, gave them a whole bunch of presents and trash like, oh, my bad, I killed your people, but here's a PlayStation 17 and a box of bug spray. Peace. Huh? So once again, this analogy is filled with all manners of logical holes. It fails to see the benefit of isolation. What he's talking about is isolation with no allies. Right? But isolation has its benefit about maintaining the integrity of a thing. So you can see someone's argument and have an understanding of what people are talking about without being so myopic, because the first guy said, yes, I agree with allyship. But you have to understand what we're talking about. That within itself shows that he was a person who agreed with the first model concept. So now, here's the last point.
Shout out to Miss Lady, the beautiful Miss Lady. What does Miss Lady say? As a RP lady, I get heat from women for being a pick-me. And then I get heat from red pill men too for showing support. What are we supposed to do with this? Please, men, show grace. Us women, show grace. Us women who support you, please. And this is, I feel you. And let me say this, because I said, oh, what about the women, Dr. Neil? What about the women in the chat? Oh, Lee's damn simp. Lee, he's a simp. Right? I hear you, but you see stuff like this. This lady has no reason to send me such a generous super chat,
This lady here, she asked an interesting question with a super chat. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some time out to address this woman's question. Okay? So, yeah, now some women, they might experience some pushback from some guys, right? If these women say, hey, yeah, I support Manosphere, and yeah, I'm in the Manosphere space or whatever. Now, if it is the true intent of this woman to be a supporter, the best way to support is to listen and observe, right? Or carry on the message to other women, right? Or be an ally. Now, let me tell you something that may make a lot of women uncomfortable, but it is a fact. It is a fact. And if you don't like facts, then this isn't for you. The majority of men are only a fraction of themselves when they are in the company of women. That's true. What does that mean? They are behaved men. They have to actually tone down their true masculine selves in order to accommodate women. Now, that statement will prompt a knee-jerk reaction in a lot of women to shame men for even stating that as a fact. As a saying, that guys typically, have to turn down their masculinity implies that they somehow like to pole vault. But once you get past the need to insult what you care not to understand, you may be able to see men more clearly. Now, how many men, how many of y'all have experienced this, where men apologize for saying a curse word in the presence of a woman? Oh, wait a minute. Huh? How many times has the conversation of men been edited because, there's a lady here? Now, that woman probably curses like a sailor, but she'll feel offended at the speech of men when men utilize such language. Huh? You know? Now, it might not be the intellectual women that are subscribed to this channel, you know, because, you know, this is a channel for where smart women can contribute and listen as well, you know. But let's not be misled. Let's not be disingenuous about the existence of this, right? This does exist, right? See, look, I recall there was a situation that someone found important enough to make newsworthy, right? Now, this was a long time ago, but there was an incident where a woman went to work for the local fire department, right? Which consisted of all men. Now, upon arriving at this place, she saw that these men had pinups of women in bathing suits on the walls and, you know, in their locker room, you know, their little space, right? These guys, they had these pictures up. It was like cutouts of magazine. They had it up long before she got there, right? But when she went there and she raised hell and raised a fit and made such an issue about it that these men had to take everything down. They had to take it all down because she wasn't comfortable with it, right? So with that in mind, and there are countless instances of this that men have their experiences with this, right? Now, so is it your purpose to understand? Or is it your purpose just to be included regardless? Which is it? Because if it is the latter, then look, you won't be able to accept the truth. So there's no point for you to continue on with this. But if it is your aim to understand, then I will continue to share with you. So for a woman to claim to be RP, as she stated, and she feels, you know, that she's an RP woman, right? So first you have to know what that means, right? For a woman to claim to be RP means that she is fully aware. Fully aware. It means that you have become fully enlightened to the truths within a given situation, right? Even if those truths are difficult to hear or difficult to bear, you have accepted it. So, are you really RP? Right? Well, because look, we've already agreed that your purpose is to understand, which is why I have continued to share with you, right? So listen, to be enlightened, even when the truth is difficult to hear and difficult to bear, that is the truth about RP. So listen, isolating men for the purposes of improvement, you know, especially for the purposes of training and developing young men into effective warriors, is the practice of many of our ancestors, right? You look at the Mandinka warriors. You know, now the women were not excluded from men's lives or even excluded from having some sort of say and input, but they also knew that there was a journey that boy must venture on amongst the path that his father took and amongst other men. Now, despite her natural instinct to coddle and protect her child, she understood that. Now, are women important to the manosphere? I'll say this, women are important to men. And if a woman is not satisfied with being an advocate or a source of valuable information, but instead she is adamant about being an entity in the so-called manosphere, well, I can tell you, as a man amongst men that was raised by my father and grew up amongst the council of older men, the only way that she can enter into that space of men is like this. Behind a man, figuratively. Beside a man, literally. Love it or leave it alone. Now look, this has been a show. This has been an interesting topic, you know, and I'm sure that it will continue to be discussed, but that's my take. Be sure to hit that Cash App, that Super Chat, subscribe and share. You know, leave your comments in the comment section. Now, I don't always enjoy logically obliterating people's assertions, but this one was called for. And I had fun doing it. All right, guys, peace. I'm out.